Tethers for chaos. Let's get straight to it. Tethers, immigrants from the Caribbean, Africa, have created chaos for foundational Black Americans in this country. Now, let's be clear, because I always have to put the disclaimer out. This is not about hate. This is about history, and this is about truth. So there is your trigger warning. Again, this is not about hate. This is about history and the truth. For centuries, Black Americans have been the frontline soldiers in America's war for civil rights. We endured slavery, Jim Crow, lynching, and systematic exclusion. Yet we fought tooth and nail to open the gates of opportunity, not only for ourselves, by the way, but for every so-called minority in this country. In the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 were pushed through our blood and sacrifice of being Black Americans in this country. Those laws became the foundation for all non-white immigrants, Asians, Hispanics, Caribbeans, African, Indians, to come to this land and build new lives. And even to a certain degree, ladies and gentlemen, I said all non-white immigrants. Let me take back one part. Except for Irish and Italians, they benefit for civil rights as well. So I cannot exclude those groups as well. But here's the kicker, no less. The very people who benefited from our blood have often become one of the most hostile to our group. Do you guys recall W.E.B. Du Bois warned us back in the early 20th century? He wrote about how mass immigration harmed Black Americans. He documented how immigrants were given preferential treatment in labor markets while Black workers were locked out by racism. He saw how this competition deepened Black unemployment and poverty. The warning signs were there, and yet we ignored them. Let me ask you this question. Did all these immigrants, especially those who derive in their origin from the Caribbean and Africa, did they create the now today YNs that we call the young Negroes that are on the block with their pants sagging? Did they by chance create them, or am I just giving excuses? Or did mass incarceration by taking fathers out of the home by the way of Senator Biden when he was in Delaware, and the signing of that law by the way of President Clinton, Bill Clinton, that is, or William Clinton, but nonetheless, did they create YNs? I'm getting to a point because, again, we have people to come inside of our culture and masquerade and cosplay and act as if these are Black Americans up until the time they reach the sex. Are these sleeper agents within our culture? I'm just asking. The warning signs were there all along, and yet, because we're so loving, because we're so accepting, we ignore them. Now, Dr. Claude Anderson took it even further. He said, executing immigration policies without mitigating the negative impact on Native Black Americans is illegal, unconstitutional, and immoral. 6 generations of immigrants have been fast-tracked into the American dream, while foundational Black Americans remain at the very bottom of it all. And the official, we have been named, labeled, and deemed the official underclass of this nation. I want you guys to think about that, because we have people who are foundational Black Americans who speak against foundational Black Americans. And anytime you bring up history that are facts, that are truth, based by statistics and evidence, they will still say, what about today? As if any group in this nation have been through and gone through with our ancestors and what we go through today, as if it's all been washed away. Lies. The very people whose shoulders everyone stands on are left broken and at the knees. So now, if we were to fast forward today and we look at the workforce, and if we look at corporate America, who gets diversity hiring first? Who gets diversity hiring preference? Caribbeans, Africans, foreign-born Blacks. The Bureau of Labor Statistics show that foreign-born Black workers often have higher employment rates than Native Black Americans. And believe me when I tell you this, they will tell you the same. You guys are more unemployed than we are. Yeah, we may be doing Uber. We may be working at Burger King or McDonald's, but we are still more employed than foundational Black Americans. Let me guys tell you the utter truth that you guys have been missing. And I want to know why. And you want to know why. Because employers are more comfortable hiring someone with a West Indian accent than someone descended from Mississippi sharecroppers. This is structural discrimination disguised as diversity. Look at all the Black people we have. I want you guys to go to the airports in New York. Go to LaGuardia. Go to any of the airports in New York. Step off the plane. And I want you guys to ask yourself these questions. All the Black people you see working TSA and cleaning floors and driving throughout the airport and delivering elderly people to their gates, people who may have a handicap or whatever to their gate. Where are all these people from? They have dark colored skin. They have some of the same characteristics as I do, some of the same phenotypes. But as you listen in close, they speak in another language. As you're looking in close, they don't look like foundational Black Americans. Some do, some don't. How are they getting all the jobs? Oh, because you guys are lazy. You guys didn't fill out an application for this job. That's why. Oh, really? Huh. Excuse me. But the evidence shows otherwise, ladies and gentlemen. I want you guys to look at the economics. Immigrant groups from Asia to Nigerians come together. They pool their resources and build businesses in our community. How did they get these resources? That is because systematic oppression, which a lot of people say doesn't exist for Black Americans, which it does, had been given those jobs simply based on the fact that they're immigrants. So now they have more resources by the way of the jobs that they receive from a very oppressive system that don't want to see Black Americans in place. They don't want to see the native Blacks of this land in place. Just to start businesses in our communities. And I blame us for allowing that to happen, because the only reason why they can build businesses in our community is because we are patrons, because we are consumers of the products. If we want to run our own businesses, then we have to start patronizing these businesses. It has nothing to do with them. They are doing what the government allows them to do, whether it be local, state, or federal. This has nothing to do about hate by another group. This has everything to do with empowerment for foundational Black Americans. If Black American women want to own their own hair shops and sell their own beauty products, then you have to stop going to the shops in the hood. You have to stop going to the shops in the suburbs and patronizing people who do not give back to your community. You cannot ask people from another country. You cannot ask people from another race. Stay with me. You cannot ask people from another ethnic that's taking money out of your pocket and out of your community for the products that you want, that they're not giving back to your community. Why in the hell would they do that? They take your money and they go to their neighborhoods, they go to their community, and they circle a dollar 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times instead of patronizing or putting money back in your community. Because why would I do that? You're not my people. You're just a consumer. I want you guys to really dig deep in that. Because sometimes you might have to go to Walmart. Sometimes you may have to go to Target just to prove a point that you will not be supporting any business that don't support your neighborhood and or community. Because they open stores in our neighborhoods and they profit off of our culture and yet treat us as second-class citizens, even in our own blocks. Because, data from the Small Business Administration, it proves this, that foreign-born entrepreneurs have higher startup rates than native-born Blacks, than foundational Black Americans. Not because they're better, not because they're smarter, not because they're more innovative, but because the government programs and banks give them easier access to loans that we are systematically denied. How do we overcome this blockade? How do we overcome this hurdle? Group economics. Because we understand the tether class and a lot of these immigrants, they come here to kill, steal, and destroy. Not literally in some regards, but very figuratively. And then there's social media and culture. Notice how Afrobeat and dance hall music, all of these things are now dominating, okay? In some regards, how this sort of music that comes from African and the Caribbean influences, they can cosplay as Black Americans. They copy our slang, they wear our fashion, they use our struggle, but they would tell us you don't have any culture. You're living in our culture. You're literally exuberating every piece of our culture. What are you talking about? They copy the very words that we state. They wear our fashion as if we do. And then the algorithm rewards them. The YouTube algorithm, the TikTok algorithm, the Instagram algorithm. Because when foundational Black Americans speak raw truth, we're shadow banned, but people will tell us we're not shadow banned. And then we're demonetized and silenced. We are punished for being authentic while others get rewarded for playing us. This is the chaos. This is the chaos that I'm referring to, ladies and gentlemen. This is the sabotage. This is what I'm referring to. Our elders, they made a tragic miscalculation. They believed that unity with every non-white group would build a coalition. When they brought in the Vietnamese into the Black neighborhoods, that's your nail shops, by the way. When they brought in the Koreans into the Black neighborhoods, that's your beauty shops, by the way. When they brought in the Middle Easterners, as well as the Ethiopians and Somalis, they opened up 7-Elevens and gas stations. These are the businesses that once were Black. And all the construction jobs, they brought in Hispanics. And they use these other groups as buffer classes as systematic oppression continue to keep us unemployed and living off the tit of the government. But our ancestors, our elders, unfortunately, and I understand during that time, the strategy that they imposed. But this was a tragic miscalculation. They believed that unity with every non-white group would be a coalition. Instead, many of these groups came here with anti-Black American ideology baked into their minds. And the ones that I go after the hardest are those from Africa as well as the Caribbean. Because they look like us to a degree. They use the very slang because a lot of them are first and second generation that grew up around us. So they speak like us. They sound like us. And what else? Certain people from countries in Africa, they were like, oh, you want to drop the African from America because we are a different group. We've been in the Americas for thousands of years. We've had reports early as the 1400s of Black people being in America. A Nigerian doesn't call himself Kenyan. A Kenyan doesn't call himself Moroccan. A Moroccan doesn't call himself as if he was from Madagascar. None of these groups, they're all different. They have a different culture. Some of them are similar in food, but nonetheless, they will say that they are different people. Somalians don't call themselves Ethiopians and vice versa. So we are a different group. See, here's the thing. If we understand that majority of slaves out of Africa, roughly 5 million went to Brazil, those Africans that were taken to Brazil, they call themselves what? African Brazilians? Or they call themselves Brazilians? I digress. Those Africans that were brought to the Caribbean, to all those countries, Grenada, Jamaica, all of these Belize, all these countries, Honduras, all these Dominican Republic, Haiti, do they call themselves African Haitians? Or they call themselves Haitians? So this is why we call ourselves foundational Black Americans. We drop the Africa just as well as any other group dropped the African, because they are in a land that they built culture and history with. Maybe that's hard to understand. But again, a lot of these groups come to America with anti-Black ideology. And in some regards, the ideology that they have was given to them by their parents, and their parents have been infused with white colonization ideology from the colonization of Africa and the Caribbean. Think about how a lot of these tethers, not all Black immigrants, let me, as my disclaimer, I'm not referring to all Black immigrants from these countries, only those tethers. And believe me, the tethers know exactly who I'm talking about. They were taught their ideology by colonial powers and reinforced by white supremacy. Instead of joining us, they distance themselves when they achieve their quote unquote greatness from us. They sneer at us. They turn up their noses at us. They even teach their children to despise us. And here's the truth that nobody wants to admit. Black Americans, let's keep it real. We have no friends. Neely Fuller stated the best. We have no friends. When we march and when we protest, when we rebel, they don't show up in solidarity for us. They show up to co-op. They show up to sabotage. They use our fight to advance their cause, and then they vanish when it's time to demand reparations, justice, or even true equity. Even within our own group, we have had traitors. So I only want you guys to imagine that outsiders come in masquerading as us, speaking for us, especially in politics. Like Il Homa, all these different people from all these different countries get into politics to change the very demographics of our neighborhood and communities. And they're leading movements in our name. They do it under the guise and coverage of Black people. But all Black people are not the same. Not all white people are the same. Not all Asian or Hispanic people are the same. They come from different countries. They have different cultures. They had different systematic issues that they're all dealing with in some regards, but none of them are like us. Because when I want you to think about these African and Caribbean tethers, where do their loyalties really lie? Who are they really serving? All the while the government funds, the government sponsors uplift these tethers because they know one thing: divided, we can never be free. And as I stated before, this is not about hate. This is the recognition of the plot, a recognition that while the world cosplays us, only foundational Black Americans live with the scars, the trauma, and the generational poverty created by the system. Oh, well, you guys been talking this slave talk and Jim Crow talk for 100 and some years. Well, our people were enslaved for 400 years. Can you give us 300 years more to get out of it? And by the way, can you make this a justice society, equal across the board? If a black American and a white American run into the corner store, both with the same, gun, none of us have previous records that we are then tried and charged exactly the same. But then that may come down to economics. Well, you need money for a good lawyer. And they know we don't have the money for good lawyers. Only a couple of us, only a certain percentage of us have money for a really good lawyer. So they know that. And then majority of the jurors be what? We're going to have a jury of your peers. Oh, I don't look like nobody from my neighborhood. I see one Black guy over there. I want you guys to think about that. But we need to stop being naive. Stop assuming kinship based on melanin. Stop assuming that because we are married to someone from another country that we should take their side. No, you can be married to whoever you're married to, but you can still be rooted in foundational Black American justice and inequality. You still can do those things. Oh no, we should allow the illegal immigrants to stay because my wife, she was over here legally, then she got her green card. Now she's a citizen. No, don't base our struggle off your love life and your sex life. It's bigger than that. Because in America, skin folk are always not your kinfolk. Some are sleeper agents in our culture, in our society, consciously or unconsciously aligned with the very system that keeps us down. The time has come for us to draw the line, and not out of malice. No. Not out of malice, but out of survival. Because until we protect our lineage, until we call out the chaos, until we prioritize FBA first, we will remain at the bottom of the ladder that we built. This is without a doubt. Tethers created chaos for FBAs by the way of government support. And unless we confront it, our future will be stolen again. This is not about hate. This is not about division. This is not about anti-immigrant. This is about power. This is about empowerment. This is about us.